November 14, 1944. The Hürtgen Forest, Germany. Through the frost-covered scope of his Karabiner 98K, Hauptfeldwebel Klaus Dietrich watched the American positions with barely concealed amusement. The 32-year-old veteran of 3 winters on the Eastern Front had seen every type of enemy soldier, survived Stalingrad's frozen hell, and earned his reputation as one of the Wehrmacht's most lethal marksmen with 147 confirmed kills. What he observed through the morning mist made him smile beneath his camouflage netting. The Americans were setting up what appeared to be sniper positions with rifles that looked like museum pieces from the previous war. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Dietrich lowered his scope and turned to his spotter, Oberstfreiter Hans Weber, unable to suppress a laugh that formed clouds in the freezing air. "They have brought antiques to a modern war," he whispered, his breath visible in the November cold. "Look at those long rifles. My grandfather carried something similar at Verdun. Do the Americans think this is 1918? Weber peered through his spotting scope at the American lines roughly 800 meters distant. The massive rifles were indeed distinctive, their lengthy barrels extending far beyond the stocks, wood furniture gleaming even in the gray dawn light. "They look heavy," Weber observed. "Like hunting rifles for elephants, not men." What neither Dietrich nor any of the German snipers positioned along the Hürtgen's devastated ridgelines could have known was that they were observing the deployment of Marine Scout sniper teams equipped with the Springfield M1903A4, a weapon system that would transform their contemptuous amusement into visceral terror within 48 hours. The rifle they dismissed as an antique was about to demonstrate capabilities that would shatter every assumption the Wehrmacht held about American marksmanship. Among the Marines establishing positions in the shattered remains of what had once been a German logging station was Corporal Thomas Mitchell, a 23-year-old from the mountains of eastern Tennessee. Mitchell had grown up with a rifle in his hands, hunting in the Appalachian Highlands where a missed shot meant his family went hungry. He had been shooting since age 7, knew how to read wind across ridges, understood how temperature affected trajectory, and could judge distance by terrain features alone. The Springfield in his hands was not an antique. It was an instrument of precision that he had zeroed personally, adjusted for his specific hold and breathing pattern, and practiced with until he could place 5 rounds through the same hole at 300 yards. The M1903A4 that Mitchell cradled represented the culmination of American bolt-action rifle development. Built on the 1903 Springfield action that had served in the First World War, this variant had been specifically modified for precision shooting. The standard iron sights had been removed and replaced with a Weaver 330C telescopic sight, a rugged optic designed to maintain zero under the harshest combat conditions. The stock had been modified with a pistol grip for better control, the trigger had been refined to a crisp 3-pound pull, and the barrel had been selected from production runs that showed exceptional accuracy. Each rifle was individually tested, with only those capable of sub-2-inch groups at 100 yards being approved for sniper use. The ammunition itself was revolutionary. The M2 ball cartridge fired a 174-grain boat-tail bullet at 2,700 feet per second, maintaining supersonic velocity past 1,000 yards. The boat-tail design, with its tapered rear section, reduced drag and improved ballistic coefficient, allowing the bullet to retain energy and resist wind drift far better than conventional projectiles. At extended ranges where German 7.92mm Mauser rounds were dropping precipitously and losing energy, the American .30-06 cartridge was still flying flat and hitting hard. Mitchell's spotter, Private First Class Raymond Cole from rural Oklahoma, was scanning the German positions through his M8 spotting scope when he caught movement along the ridgeline approximately 900 yards distant. "Contact," Cole whispered, his voice barely audible even to Mitchell lying beside him. "Ridge crest, 11 o'clock, movement in the tree line. 2, maybe 3 positions." Mitchell shifted his scope to the indicated area, his breathing slowing automatically as he entered what his instructors at Camp Lejeune had called the shooter's trance. Through the 4-power magnification, he could make out disturbed snow patterns and the faint outline of camouflage netting. The Germans were well concealed, professionals who understood fieldcraft. But they had made one critical mistake. They assumed 900 yards placed them beyond effective American rifle range. The German sniper doctrine, refined through years of combat on the eastern and western fronts, emphasized engagements between 300 and 600 meters. Their Karabiner 98K rifles, equipped with ZF-42 4-power scopes, were optimized for these ranges. German snipers were trained to engage targets they could identify clearly, to make quick shots and relocate before counter-sniper fire could find them. The concept of engaging targets beyond 800 meters was considered impractical. At such distances, wind drift became excessive, trajectory drop required extreme holdover, and target identification was nearly impossible with standard optics. What the Germans failed to understand was that American doctrine had evolved differently. Marine Scout sniper training, conducted at specialized schools where students fired thousands of rounds under varying conditions, emphasized extreme range precision. Marines trained to engage targets out to 1,200 yards, learning to read mirage for wind speed, to calculate minute-of-angle holds for different ranges, and to work as spotter-shooter teams where the spotter's calculations were as important as the shooter's skill. The philosophy was simple. If you could see the enemy, you could kill the enemy. Distance was merely a mathematical problem to be solved. Mitchell's training kicked in automatically. Range to target? He asked Cole quietly. Cole consulted his milled-out reticle, measuring the distance using the known height of German equipment visible in the scope. 920 yards, give or take 10. Wind is left to right, approximately 8 miles per hour based on snow movement. Temperature is 32 degrees. Barometric pressure is high, we're at 1,600 feet elevation. Mitchell processed the information with the calculating precision of an engineer. The M2 ball ammunition had a ballistic coefficient of .500. At 920 yards, the bullet would drop approximately 22 feet from line of sight, requiring roughly 7 minutes of angle elevation adjustment. The 8-mile-per-hour crosswind would drift the bullet approximately 18 inches at that range, requiring 1 minute of angle windage correction. The cold temperature would reduce muzzle velocity slightly, adding another half minute of elevation. The high altitude, high pressure conditions would reduce air density, decreasing drift marginally. He made the scope adjustments, the clicks of the Weaver's adjustment knobs precise and mechanical. 7 minutes up for elevation, 1 minute left for wind. The mathematics of long-range shooting were unforgiving. A single minute of angle equaled roughly 1 inch at 100 yards, scaling proportionally with distance. At 900 yards, each click of his scope's quarter-minute adjustments represented approximately 2 inches of impact shift. There was no margin for error. Through his scope, Mitchell could now see movement more clearly. A German sniper was shifting position, likely preparing to engage American infantry movement in the valley below. The target presented only a partial silhouette, perhaps 18 inches of exposed torso and head behind camouflage netting. At this range, in these conditions, most riflemen would consider the shot impossible. Mitchell had made harder shots on the training ranges at Quantico. He settled into his shooting position, the fundamentals drilled through thousands of repetitions becoming automatic. Body aligned behind the rifle, left hand supporting the forend, right hand with firm but not excessive grip on the pistol grip, finger resting lightly on the trigger. Breathing slowed to a rhythmic pattern, exhaling partially and holding at the natural respiratory pause where the body was most stable. The crosshairs settled on the target, moving with the tiny tremors of heartbeat and respiration that could never be entirely eliminated. Cole was watching through the spotting scope, ready to call the shot impact. Wind hasn't changed. Target is stationary. Send it. Mitchell applied pressure to the trigger, 3 pounds of steady increase until the sear released with a crisp break that always came as a slight surprise, preventing the flinch that ruined precision. The Springfield roared, the heavy rifle pushing back against his shoulder with substantial but manageable recoil. Through the scope, he maintained his sight picture, watching for impact as the rifle settled back on target. 920 yards away, Hauptfeldwebel Klaus Dietrich was adjusting his position when the universe exploded. The 174-grain bullet, traveling at still over 1,300 feet per second after its nearly 3-second flight, struck him precisely where his left shoulder met his neck. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The massive kinetic energy, over 1,500 foot-pounds remaining at that range, transferred into tissue with catastrophic results. Dietrich was dead before his body registered the impact, the wound channel through his upper torso and neck incompatible with life. His spotter, Oberstfreiter Weber, froze in shock. They had taken sniper fire from nearly 1,000 meters. The report of the rifle reached them a full second after the impact, the crack of the supersonic bullet's passage followed by the deeper boom of the muzzle blast. Weber's mind struggled to process what had happened. The Americans were not supposed to be capable of such shots. Their rifles were old, their training was inferior, their marksmanship was adequate for close-range combat but not for the precision art of sniping. Yet Dietrich was dead from a shot that Weber would have considered beyond the capability of even the best German marksman. Cole's voice was calm as he observed the impact through the spotting scope. Center mass hit. Target down. No movement. Mitchell worked the Springfields bolt, the smooth action ejecting the spent cartridge and chambering a fresh round with mechanical precision. The rifle's bolt-action design, often criticized as obsolete compared to semi-automatic rifles like the M1 Garand, offered distinct advantages for precision shooting. The locked bolt provided a rigid, consistent platform that didn't shift with each shot. The lack of a gas system meant no mechanical movement to disturb the barrel harmonics. Every component of the system was optimized for accuracy rather than rate of fire. Secondary target, Cole called out. Spotter, same position, appears to be trying to relocate. Weber was attempting to gather Dietrich's equipment when the second shot came. This one, fired at a target now aware and moving, missed by inches, the bullet impacting the tree trunk beside Weber's head with enough force to spray splinters across his face. He abandoned the position immediately, crawling rapidly backward through the snow, his mind reeling with the implications of what he had just witnessed. Within the hour, Weber was reporting to Oberleutnant Friedrich Steiner, commanding officer of the sniper section assigned to defend this sector of the Hürtgen Forest. Steiner, a veteran with 83 confirmed kills and experience across multiple fronts, listened to Weber's report with growing concern. "You are certain of the range?" he asked, his tone skeptical. Weber nodded emphatically. "I ranged the American position immediately after. 930 meters, perhaps 940. The shot was precise, Herr Oberleutnant. Not lucky. Precise. And the second shot was equally close. They are shooting with accuracy at ranges we considered safe." Steiner dismissed Weber and consulted his maps. If the Americans had snipers capable of effective fire beyond 900 meters, it changed the tactical equation entirely. German positions that had been established based on conventional engagement distances were now vulnerable. Observation posts, machine gun nests, mortar positions, all had been sited with the assumption that 600 meters provided adequate standoff from American rifles. That assumption had just been proven fatally wrong. What Steiner and the German High Command did not yet understand was the scope of the American sniper capability being deployed into the Hürtgen Forest. The Marine Scout Sniper program had been developing throughout the Pacific Campaign, refined through combat in Guadalcanal, Tarawa, Saipan, and Peleliu. The program selected only the most naturally gifted marksmen, men who had grown up hunting, who understood fieldcraft instinctively, and who possessed the mental discipline for the patience and precision that sniping required. The training was exhaustive and unforgiving. Candidates fired thousands of rounds at ranges from 100 to 1,200 yards, learning to judge distances by terrain features, to read wind from vegetation movement and mirage distortion, to calculate holds for temperature and altitude variations. They studied bullet ballistics, learned to construct hide positions that were invisible even from meters away, and practiced stalking techniques that allowed them to approach to within shooting range undetected. The failure rate exceeded 70%. Those who graduated were among the finest rifle shots the American military had ever produced. Corporal Thomas Mitchell was among the top 10% of that select group. His final qualification at Camp Lejeune had included a perfect score on the known distance course, placing 10 consecutive rounds into a 10-inch circle at 1,000 yards in variable wind conditions. His stalking exercise had resulted in the instructors being unable to locate him even after he had taken his practice shot from less than 200 yards. His performance had earned him assignment to the newly formed Marine Scout Sniper Platoon being attached to Army units in Europe, bringing Pacific combat lessons to the European theater. The doctrine Mitchell and his fellow Marine snipers brought to the Hürtgen Forest was revolutionary by European standards. Rather than engaging in the cat-and-mouse games of traditional counter-sniping at moderate ranges, the Marines established positions at extreme standoff distances and systematically eliminated German positions before the enemy could effectively return fire. The Springfields' superior ballistics, combined with superior American optics and training, created a capability gap that German snipers had never encountered. On November 15, the day after Dietrich's death, Oberleutnant Steiner personally led a reconnaissance to locate the American sniper positions. He brought his two best remaining snipers, both veterans with over 50 kills each. They moved before dawn, using the darkness and their intimate knowledge of the forest terrain to establish observation posts on the high ground overlooking the American-held valley. As the sun rose, Steiner glassed the American positions through his excellent Zeiss binoculars. He could identify fighting positions, machine gun emplacements, and what appeared to be forward observer posts for artillery. What he could not locate were the sniper hides. The Americans had vanished into the landscape with a level of camouflage discipline that impressed even his experienced eye. Mitchell and Cole had displaced during the night, moving to a new position 400 yards from their previous hide. They had selected a spot among the jumbled rocks and fallen timber created by artillery bombardment, constructing a hide that presented no obvious signature even from close range. Their position offered clear fields of fire across the German-held ridgelines at ranges between 800 and 1,100 yards. They had prearranged multiple potential target areas, recording the exact ranges and calculating the required holds for the current atmospheric conditions. Through his scope, Mitchell observed movement on the German-held ridge. 3 figures were moving with the deliberate caution of experienced soldiers, using terrain and vegetation for concealment. Their movements were professional, suggesting sniper or reconnaissance elements rather than regular infantry. Range? He asked Cole quietly. Cole was already calculating. 1,070 yards to the center position. Wind is variable, switching between 6 and 10 miles per hour, generally left to right but gusty. Temperature has risen to 38 degrees since dawn. Mitchell considered the shot. 1,070 yards was at the extreme edge of his effective range, even under ideal conditions. The variable wind made the calculation complex, as he would need to judge the wind speed at the moment of firing and apply the appropriate hold. The target was moving, requiring lead calculation in addition to the range and wind corrections. By every conventional measure, the shot was inadvisable. But Mitchell had trained for exactly these conditions. He watched the target through his scope, studying the movement pattern. The German was proceeding carefully but predictably, moving from one covered position to the next with brief pauses to observe. The distances between covered positions were approximately 30 yards, requiring roughly 15 seconds of movement in the open. If Mitchell timed his shot for the midpoint of that movement, he could predict the target's position with reasonable accuracy. The ballistic calculation was complex. At 1,070 yards, the bullet would drop approximately 31 feet, requiring nearly 10 minutes of angle elevation. The 8-mile-per-hour wind would drift the bullet roughly 24 inches, requiring 1.5 minutes of windage. But the variable gusts could push that drift to over 30 inches if the wind spiked to 10 miles per hour during the bullet's 3.5-second flight time. Mitchell would need to judge the wind at the instant of firing and apply his hold accordingly. He made his scope adjustments and settled into his shooting position. The target emerged from cover, beginning his movement to the next position. Mitchell's crosshairs tracked ahead of the moving figure, leading by approximately 3 feet to account for the target's walking pace during bullet flight. His breathing slowed, his finger took up the trigger slack, and the rifle fired. The shot felt perfect from the moment of trigger break. The crosshairs had been steady, the wind had been at the lower end of its variable range, and the target had maintained a consistent walking pace. Mitchell maintained his sight picture through the recoil, watching through the scope for impact. Oberleutnant Steiner was moving between observation positions when his world ended. The bullet struck him in the center of the chest with devastating effect, the impact audible to his companions even at distance. He collapsed instantly, killed within seconds by massive trauma to the heart and lungs. His two sniper companions dove for cover, their minds struggling with the same disbelief that Weber had experienced the previous day. The shot had come from over 1,000 meters, at a moving target, in variable wind conditions. Such shots were theoretically possible but practically absurd. Yet Steiner was dead, killed by American marksmanship that exceeded anything in their experience. One of the German snipers, Feldwebel Anton Becker, was a veteran of the siege of Leningrad where he had earned 64 confirmed kills. He had faced Soviet snipers who were legendary for their skill and ruthlessness. He had survived encounters that should have killed him multiple times. But he had never faced an enemy who could kill with such precision at such range. The Americans had demonstrated a capability that fundamentally changed the nature of the sniper war. Becker and his companion, Gefreiter Paul Richter, retreated under cover, abandoning Steiner's body. They reported immediately to battalion headquarters, where their account was met with skepticism. The battalion commander, Major Wilhelm Hoffmann, questioned them extensively. "You are certain it was rifle fire and not a mortar round or artillery?" Becker shook his head firmly. The sound was unmistakable, Herr Major. "A rifle shot, heavy caliber. And we heard the bullet impact before we heard the muzzle report. The Americans are shooting from extreme range with precision we cannot match." Hoffmann was a practical officer who had learned to trust his experienced soldiers. If his best snipers reported that the Americans possessed superior long-range capability, he would operate on that assumption. He immediately ordered all German positions to be evaluated for vulnerability to fire from ranges exceeding 1,000 meters. Observation posts were to be relocated, camouflage discipline was to be enhanced, and movement during daylight hours was to be minimized. But the adjustments came too late to save many German soldiers. Over the following week, Marine Scout snipers systematically eliminated German positions across the Hürtgen sector. Machine gun nests that had been sighted to cover approaches at 400 meters found their crews dead from shots fired at 900 yards. Forward observers who had felt secure in positions 800 meters from American lines were killed before they could call in artillery. German snipers who attempted to engage American targets at conventional ranges discovered too late that their positions had been identified and ranged, the return fire coming from distances they could not match. The psychological impact on German forces was profound and immediate. Soldiers who had served on the Eastern Front, who had faced Soviet artillery barrages and massed infantry assaults without breaking, found themselves terrified of an enemy they could not see and could not effectively engage. The distinctive crack of the Springfield firing from extreme range became a sound that induced panic. German soldiers began refusing to occupy forward positions during daylight hours. Officers who attempted to observe enemy positions found their men unwilling to accompany them. Feldwebel Becker, attempting to counter the American snipers, established a position on the highest available ground with clear sight lines exceeding 1,200 meters. He brought his finest rifle, a Karabiner 98K that he had personally selected and zeroed, equipped with a high-quality ZF-42 scope. He calculated ranges to multiple potential American positions and prepared detailed range cards. He was determined to prove that German marksmanship could match the Americans. On November 22, 8 days after Mitchell's first kill in the sector, Becker spotted movement in the American lines at what he calculated to be 960 meters. The target was partially concealed but presented enough of a silhouette for engagement. Becker made his calculations, applied his holds, and fired what he was certain was a perfect shot. The bullet impacted 18 inches low and 24 inches right of the target, striking a log fortification with a spray of splinters. The miss was not due to poor marksmanship. Becker's calculations had been correct for his equipment. But the 7.92mm Mauser cartridge, despite being an excellent combat round, did not possess the ballistic coefficient of the American .30-06. At extreme range, the German bullet dropped more precipitously and drifted more in the wind. The performance gap that seemed negligible at 400 meters became decisive at 1,000. Becker's shot revealed his position to the American scouts, who immediately ranged and engaged. 3 Springfields fired nearly simultaneously, their reports overlapping into a continuous roar. 1 bullet missed by feet. 1 struck the tree beside Becker's position. The 3rd hit him in the shoulder, the impact spinning him away from his rifle. He survived only because the thick winter clothing and equipment had absorbed enough energy to prevent the wound from being immediately fatal. As medics evacuated Becker to the rear, he was in shock not from his wound but from the realization of German vulnerability. The Americans could kill at ranges where German return fire was ineffective. The Wehrmacht's sniper arm, refined through years of combat and considered among the finest in the world, was being systematically destroyed by American marksmen using rifles the Germans had dismissed as obsolete. Intelligence reports reaching German high command in late November painted a disturbing picture. American sniper activity in the Hürtgen Forest had resulted in disproportionate casualties among German reconnaissance elements, forward observers, and leadership personnel. The Americans were demonstrating the ability to identify and eliminate high-value targets at ranges previously considered safe. Standard counter-sniper tactics were proving ineffective because German snipers could not match the American standoff distance. What made the situation more frustrating for German commanders was the realization that the American capability derived not from some revolutionary new weapon but from superior training, superior ammunition, and superior doctrine applied to a rifle design that dated to before the First World War. The Springfield M1903 was mechanically similar to the German Gur 98 that had served in that previous conflict. The Americans had simply refined every aspect of the weapon system and the training of the men who used it to achieve performance that exceeded German capabilities. The ammunition difference was particularly significant. American ammunition manufacturing, benefiting from precise industrial processes and quality control that German wartime production could no longer match, produced cartridges with exceptional consistency. Bullet weight variation was held to less than 1 grain. Powder charges were measured to within 0.1 grain. Overall cartridge length was controlled to within 0.005 inches. This consistency meant that American snipers could rely on their ballistic calculations with confidence, knowing their ammunition would perform predictably from round to round. German ammunition production, stressed by years of total war and increasingly disrupted by Allied bombing, could not maintain such tight tolerances. Bullet weights varied by several grains. Powder charges showed measurable inconsistency. The result was ammunition that produced acceptable accuracy at conventional combat ranges but showed increasing dispersion at extreme distances. A German sniper might calculate perfect holds for 1,000 meters only to have the inconsistent ammunition place shots unpredictably around the aim point. The optics gap was equally significant. American scopes, produced by companies like Weaver and Lyman using precision lens grinding and advanced optical coatings, offered clarity and light transmission that German wartime production struggled to match. The Weaver 330C scope on Mitchell's Springfield provided a clear, bright image even in the low light conditions common in the Hürtgen Forest's dense canopy. German ZF-42 scopes, while adequate, showed noticeable image degradation in similar conditions. But perhaps the most significant advantage was training. Marine Scout Sniper School required 3 months of intensive instruction covering every aspect of long-range shooting. Students learned not just to shoot but to understand the complete ballistic environment. They studied meteorology to predict weather effects on trajectories. They learned range estimation using multiple techniques to ensure accuracy. They practiced judging wind speed and direction from vegetation movement, mirage distortion, and even dust or snow patterns. The stalking and fieldcraft training was equally rigorous. Students practiced constructing hide positions that were invisible even from close inspection. They learned to move across open ground without creating signature movement that would draw attention. They studied camouflage principles, understanding how the human eye detected pattern, color contrast, and movement. By the time a Marine Scout sniper graduated, he was equally proficient at shooting and at remaining undetected while doing so. German sniper training, while producing skilled marksmen, emphasized shorter courses focused on immediate combat application. A German sniper might receive 4 to 6 weeks of instruction covering marksmanship fundamentals and basic fieldcraft before being sent to combat units. The training produced adequate results for conventional engagement ranges but did not prepare snipers for the extreme range precision shooting that American doctrine emphasized. By December 1944, the Marine Scout sniper teams had achieved complete dominance over the Hürtgen sector. German forces abandoned daylight observation entirely, conducting reconnaissance only during darkness or heavy weather that obscured visibility. The cost of attempting conventional sniper operations had become prohibitive. 17 German snipers had been killed in 3 weeks, most from ranges exceeding 800 yards. The survivors refused forward deployment, their morale shattered by an enemy they could not effectively engage. Mitchell's reputation spread through both armies. German intelligence identified him through interrogation of captured American soldiers and radio intercepts. They knew his name, his unit, and his approximate position. What they could not do was counter him. Several attempts to eliminate Mitchell using indirect fire failed when his high positions proved impossible to locate precisely enough for effective artillery targeting. The Americans had mastered not just shooting but survival. The Springfields' capabilities extended beyond precision shooting. Marine snipers began engaging German positions with devastating psychological effect. A machine gun crew would occupy their position at dawn only to have their gunner killed moments later by a shot from beyond visual range. Artillery observers attempting to direct fire found themselves under accurate counter-sniper fire before they could complete their missions. German officers quickly learned that exposing themselves for even brief periods during daylight invited death from invisible rifles. The industrial advantage that had produced the Springfield system became increasingly apparent. While German sniper rifles were individually excellent weapons, American production ensured every Marine sniper received a rifle of match-grade quality. The ammunition supply was unlimited, allowing extensive practice and zero confirmation. Replacement optics arrived within days when scopes were damaged. The logistics supporting American snipers ensured they operated at peak effectiveness continuously, while German snipers struggled with deteriorating equipment and ammunition shortages. German after-action reports from the Hürtgen sector revealed the psychological collapse. Underoffizier Ernst Koch, who survived 3 months facing Marine snipers, wrote in his diary that the Americans had transformed sniping from tactical nuisance into strategic weapon. His unit had lost 32 men to sniper fire, most killed instantly from ranges where they believed themselves safe. The distinctive sound of the Springfield became associated with sudden death, creating what medical officers diagnosed as combat fatigue but was essentially terror of an enemy that killed without warning from impossible distances. The technical assessment compiled by Wehrmacht ordnance officers in January 1945 concluded that American long-range marksmanship capability exceeded German equivalents by significant margins. The Springfield rifle combined with superior ammunition and training created a weapons system optimized for extreme range precision. German attempts to develop comparable capabilities were hampered by resource shortages and the late stage of the war. The report recommended avoiding engagement with American snipers whenever possible, an admission of tactical defeat. By February 1945, Mitchell had confirmed 38 kills, all at ranges exceeding 700 yards, with his longest successful engagement at 1,210 yards. That shot, fired in ideal conditions against a German officer observing from what he believed was a safe distance, became legendary among Marine snipers. The bullet had traveled for nearly 4 seconds, dropped over 40 feet from line of sight, and struck with enough retained energy to kill instantly. German soldiers who witnessed the shot from adjacent positions reported being unable to comprehend how such precision was achievable. The final vindication came during post-war interrogations when captured German sniper instructors were questioned about American capabilities. Hauptmann Ludwig Weber, formerly chief instructor at the Wehrmacht sniper school, acknowledged that German doctrine had been fundamentally wrong about engagement ranges. The Americans understood that technology and training could extend effective rifle range far beyond what we considered practical. They built their entire system around that understanding. We built ours around tradition and our existing capabilities. When the two systems met in combat, ours was obsolete. The Springfield M1903 F4 remained in Marine Corps service through Korea, where it again proved its worth. The rifle that German snipers had mocked as an antique outlasted the Wehrmacht itself, serving with distinction long after the Karabiner 98K had been retired. The lesson was clear. Superior training, superior ammunition, and superior doctrine could transform even an older weapon design into a dominant combat system. The Germans had learned this lesson at cost measured in hundreds of casualties and shattered confidence. Their laughter at the long American rifles had died in the Hürtgen Forest, silenced by the thunder of 30-06 rounds arriving from distances they could not match. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.